Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, we start a new book today, that of Ecclesiastes. Now, the author is traditionally thought to be Solomon, who is obviously the man who asked God for wisdom and God gave it to him. He penned over 1,000 Psalms and 3,000 Proverbs according to 1 Kings chapter 4. He wrote 3 books of the Bible, Song of Songs when he was a young man falling in love. Then he wrote Proverbs while he was wrestling through the things of life, and Ecclesiastes after he had really messed things up properly and he was reflecting on all the days of his life. So this book reads like philosophy. It way predates Aristotle, Socrates, all those famous philosophers, but sort of it's the father of philosophy, really, this book of Ecclesiastes. And we can really relate to this guy. I mean, he was intelligent, yes, but he made some massive mistakes. Primarily, mostly centered around the women that he chose. He had 700 wives, and the reason he had so many is that he was making peace deals with all the kings around him. Now, that caused him a lot of heartache. On top of that, he had 300 concubines, or what we would know these days as mistresses. And so this was the reason for his fall, actually, from walking in God's ways. But anyway, he was a complicated guy, not happy by the looks of Ecclesiastes. And what we see in chapter 1 is that he explores meaning, the meaning of life. And then in chapter 2, satisfaction. What is satisfaction? How do we live satisfied lives? So let's explore meaning now in chapter 1. Here I am. I'm at a pit stop on the way home. I've had to fly home very quickly because one of my friends here, a colleague in ministry, has tragically died. And, when you deal with death, especially if someone whose life is cut short, you begin to think about the meaning of life, don't you? As I look at this freeway and I see the buses coming and going and people coming and going, you wonder, what's the meaning of the lives of all these people? Well, when Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes 1, he approached it not so much as a teaching, but as a dialogue of questions. His job wasn't to give answers in Ecclesiastes. If you read Ecclesiastes looking for answers, you're going to be in trouble. He's pushing you to ask the questions. Why do you believe that? Why are you doing that? And so what we're going to learn is as we probe the questions that he asks, we're going to learn lessons from the greatest playboy that the world has probably ever seen. And so this is how he starts. He says, meaningless, meaningless. Everything I'm looking at is meaningless. He says it more than 38 times in the book. And so when someone says something that many times, you know that that's a point he's trying to get you to reflect on. He says, stop and ask, what's the meaning of your life? If someone said to you, go to that corner of the road there, just next to the petrol station, at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and wait there, you would ask him, why? You wouldn't just blindly go and do it. He's saying, well, we should ask the same sort of questions about life. Why are we doing the things that we're doing? And ask why. And then in verse 4, he begins to look at the cycles of life. He says, generations come, generations go, but the world remains forever. Life is not linear. It's circular. It's frustrating. There's very little progress. You tidy the cupboard, some nighttime demon comes out and, messes it up, and you've got to tidy it again tomorrow. You mow the lawn, it sprouts again. You pay your taxes, you've got to do it again next year. He says basically life is cyclical. And he probes the question along hedonistic lines, humanistic lines, and existential lines. So in other words, trying to get the most out of life, trying to understand life, and trying to do good deeds. He says, what's the point? What's the point? Now, in Ecclesiastes 2, he takes a totally different tack, and he asks this question, what brings me satisfaction? In fact, if you could put it another way, it's saying, complete the sentence, I am happiest when, I've got a full tummy, or when I'm in love, or when my kids are obeying me, whatever it is. And so he explores many things. He says, I said to myself, come now, I'll test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So he tests laughter, wine, projects, slaves, in other words, employees, getting lots of employees, singing, businesses, concubines, that's like girlfriends, whatever my eyes desired. He said, I tried everything and I found that it was all meaningless. This pleasure, he said, so I hated my life because of the work that I'd done, and the sun, it was grievous to me. all this was meaningless, like chasing after the wind. He says, because everything I've worked for, I must leave to the one who comes after me, my kids, who he says are like spoiled brats, and they're just going to waste it. So now some of you might say, well, yeah, Solomon's right. Don't live like Solomon. He lived his life as like an experiment for us. Don't live like that. Don't follow the girls. Don't follow the drink. Don't follow all that stuff. But that isn't really what the point of this chapter 2 is. He's basically looking for pleasure in the wrong places. His dad knew where pleasure was. King David said, Psalm 16, pleasure comes from the right hand of God. Pleasure is not so much a thing you do. It's a person. His name is Jesus. The psalmist says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you desire. He'll give you desire. The joy of the Lord is who he is, and he gives it to you. So there's a huge amount to cover in these chapters. I trust that you enjoy it as you go.